And for whatever reason, you have a closed mind. I don't know why. Perhaps you could tell me.
You are now listening to the Latino Free Mind podcast. Enjoy the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Latino Free Minds, episode 129. I'm here with my host, Danny. Danny, how you doing, man?
Good. I'm excited for this one today. It's something that, we've been talking about for a very long time, from the beginning,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. I was telling our guest, we started this in October 22, so 3 years ago. And it's something that we've kind of talked about, you know, from day one. And that's, election integrity, all that stuff, questioning, voter rolls and all that stuff. So we're excited to have Shiloh Marx on with us. He is the founder of California Election Integrity Initiative. Shiloh, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks you guys for having me.
Yeah, man, we're excited for this one. We've talked about Danny since day one on this show. I said that conservatives, Republicans, whatever you want to call it, are the majority in California, and we have believed that from day one. And it's hard to keep saying that, right, when Democrats keep winning, but we also, if we're being honest, there's shenanigans, right? We've said before, you're not gonna find fraud if you're not looking for it. So, we're glad to have you on. We saw what you were doing. I found you on X, and I saw kind of you were posting voter rolls, and I think you were doing inactive voters when I saw what you were posting. And one thing that I saw that was real interesting was the inactive voter versus the margin of victory, and it was basically like so similar. It was crazy. I was like, oh my god, this is good information. But before we get into all that, just tell the people who you are and kind of how you got started with the Election Integrity Initiative.
Right on, yeah. Thanks you guys for having me. So I got involved in election integrity leading into the 2024 election last year. I was brought on to it was a private election integrity initiative that was spanning through 7 states, and so I became familiar with basically the idea of trying to remove voters. And then really it took on a life of its own when I started trying to basically get into the research side of things. And so that led to me basically just like focusing on California and California elections. And then, a few months later, I didn't really mean for any of this to happen, especially not with X or Twitter. Just kind of took on a life of its own. And so, yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, like I said, it's an important conversation and important information that people in California, really need to pay attention to or look into or hear about. Maybe people don't might not hear about it, talked in the manner that we might talk about it today. So to you, when it comes to election integrity, what's the one thing that if you said, all right, people need to pay attention to this one thing for sure, what would you put priority on?
Oh, good question. Without context or getting into it, it's kind of hard.
Mhm.
But because I've looked at there's a lot of what I call like you would call just election irregularities, or if you can find a pattern throughout an
Mhm.
election that shouldn't be there. That's kind of that's what really I started looking at, was going, wait, what are the chances that this number correlates with that number? And so, um, but to answer your question, what everybody needs, if everyone was more aware of specifically how the federal law works, and if we're talking about California, how
Mhm.
federal law works with what our responsibility is with voter rolls. And so the best example is somebody the other day on X was saying that they had a family member, I think it was her daughter, that lived in California but moved out, and she's still getting a ballot. And so federal law makes it very tricky. In 1993, the National Voter Registration Act was passed and then implemented in 1996, which it basically just created a federal block for states to be able to remove voters. And so the lady that her daughter moved out, I think a lot of us assume that when we move out of a county or we move out of jurisdiction, our name gets removed. That's the biggest issue. And so when you look at federal, this is the crazy part. When you look at federal law, there's really only two ways that a voter can be removed. The most effective is if the registrant in writing confirms they no longer live in the jurisdiction. And so that's just a fancy way of saying sometimes
Mm.
you've got to actually sign a paper and send it to the county, which so many people, and that we can get into why that's a problem, but there's a lot of things that we can actually do as voters to help the process.
Mm.
Got it. But can I ask a question? You started off by saying that you kind of ran into this by accident, and I'm assuming the findings that you found, you probably weren't expecting to find what you found.
Yeah.
And I think that correlates with a lot of people because we don't know that this is happening. And I mean, like you said, there's so much context to this, and it's so complex. Can you just explain what how you came into this role and what opened your eyes? You're talking about patterns. That's the way that my brain works. It sees patterns, and you guys were talking about correlating this number with this number, and it kind of matches up. But walk us through that, like the initial um, beginning in how you started finding these anomalies, if you
Yeah.
don't mind.
Yeah. Great question. So there was an idea that people could basically challenge the county and get the county to remove what they deem to be an ineligible voter, right? And so that's just an everyday person like me or you that was basically saying, "Hey, I checked with this person's house. They don't that person doesn't live there anymore," and they would put them on a list and then bring them to the county and say, "You got to remove them." And pretty much uh, that way of cleaning the voter rolls or trying to try to promote election integrity is something that is it's prevalent and I don't want to say it's misguided, but how I figured out where what I'm doing right now is by taking that kind of that premise, right? That of saying, well, hey, I know who lives in that house. They still get a ballot. They should be removed. So that's the eligibility of a voter. And so what I found out when you look at federal law is that the federal law mandates specifically how to remove somebody. And what ended up happening is there was this category where it was like an inactive voter, somebody that didn't live there. And so at first I was looking at it and I was like, that doesn't matter. We got to get the people that we know don't live there anymore. But then when I started looking at it, and you go back, the inactive voters, they started in 1996 after the federal law was passed, but then the total amount of inactive voters started matching or surpassing the Democrat margin of victory in California. And so I was like, wait, hold on. This category has nothing to do with elections, but then you'll see like the Democrats win by 5.1 million votes, but then there's 5.3 million inactive voters. And I was like, wait, hold on. And so that's kind of how I got into it, if that makes sense.
It does. It
That's
does.
wild. I
So
mean, but would you like how many like cities or counties did you look into like that before you like really saw like, okay, this is happening, in more places than one? Because I remember, I think, like, I feel like every day you were posting this county and this county and this county, and I was like, all right, it's more than one county. So it
It's it's crazy. And the thing with X is um like I don't like to come across as a conspiratorial person or a conspiracy person, right? And so the problem is I just I'm just selective because of the lawsuits I have. Uh, I mean, because it's ended up back in there, but if I wanted, I could go county by county, and it literally have like I just try to post the 1-to-1 ratios, and so like there's somewhere, it's the Democratic margin of victory is 23,000, and there's 23,000 inactives, and so I just try to get the messaging out if that makes sense, and so it you could go back as far as you wanted and see the pattern and trend in California.
Okay. So I love that you brought up the whole conspiracy thing because that's one of the things that they try to put us in a box so that we don't have an argument, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
let's talk about some factual things that have been happening, not necessarily in California, but because I've been hearing about stories nationally where they've been cleaning up voter rolls and what they have been finding. So I'm pretty sure when you started finding these anomalies and these patterns, you started, putting the pieces to connecting the dots with what's happening nationally. Is there anything that you can educate the people with that are factual that kind of put away the conspiracy theory sentiment?
It's It's a good question. The one thing that I've needed since I started posting pretty much on X was an election to prove the theory. And so like right now it's technically just a theory.
Okay.
And I tell people when because there's been people, there's, prominent people that have called and they're basically like, okay, like, how do you know? I'm like, I don't. This is the theory, where you'll need an election in order to actually prove it. And so, to answer that fairly, there's a lot of theories, um, or there's a lot of different avenues that potentially there could be irregularities in election, but we'll actually need an election to prove.
Okay. With that being said, with everything in a business or anything that you do, there's a margin of error calculated, right?
Mhm.
So there's a margin of error with elections. Based on the patterns that you've seen and the numbers that you've seen, are those numbers, do they surpass what would be an acceptable margin of error? Does that make sense?
Yes, great question. So when I've looked at correlation in a ratio, what's a strong ratio is like a point 0.8. And so like 1-to-1 would be exact. A point 0.8 or above is pretty strong. And so that's like the margin, it's kind of what you're talking about, the margin of error. If it's outside of that, where a coincidence or if it happens one time, I'm not a big fan of trying to perpetuate things like that because anomalies do happen. But what
Mhm.
really helped and what changed everything is when you look at 30 years of data, and
Mhm.
there's a coincidence or a pattern and trend, spanning that many elections, that many different years with different policies and state laws. And so, to answer that fairly, there is a margin of error, and it's right now I'm guesstimating, but I think that there is going to be, outcome determinative results from this, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've seen that we have in California, they have purged a lot of inactive voters.
Mm,
I want to say, I think I saw close to 3 million, if give or take. I might be off. Um, and yeah, like you said, right, we have the special election coming up in November.
mm,
So I think that would be a good measuring stick for, hey, how did all these people coming off the voter roll, like what did that do, right?
mm,
And it kind of, we've been, if you follow us on Instagram, we've been kind of hammering on voting no on 50, right? And it's just, it's for people to show up.
mm,
It is normally midterm elections, you usually get like close to 50% participation. A special election like this, who knows, it might be 30, might be 40, it might be less than that. um so it'll be interesting to see, right, with all those numbers removed and the kind of participation that we do have in this special election, kind of what that translates to. And like you said, whether your theory is pretty spot on or what it is, but that is an interesting pattern to see, X amount of inactive voters versus X amount of votes won by. You do have to question that, and it's not even, I would think it's not even being conspiratorial. It's just like, hey, that's a weird coincidence. And um as far as, and just to kind of go back to the removing the inactive voters, is there a time frame they're supposed to do that by? Or there's something like that, right?
Yes. So, and that, and back to the three. So there was 3.1 million removals, but Kamala's margin of victory is 3.1 million. So the difference in those two categories was 17,000. So it's patterns like that where I'm like, but to answer that question, yes, technically the federal law states that you have to let somebody not vote in subsequent to federal elections after given a confirmation notice before they've been removed. And so there was somebody tweeted, it was actually a really good way of saying it, it's they're gaming the NVRA. And so right now, for instance, like in San Bernardino told me they have 218,000 people that meet the requirement for removal, but they inadvertently sent the confirmation notice without specific language, and so now they can't remove them until after 2026.
Mm.
And so what ends up happening is counties basically, it's the discretion of the counties to remove voters. And unless you kind of stay on them, they can kind of just get a little squirmy with that.
Mhm.
But right now there's a handful of counties that are saying like, we know we need to remove these voters, but we can't remove them until after 2026. That's just like straight up a huge red flag for me, where I'm like, oh really? So the federal law. What are the chances that these people have not interacted in a while? Uh,
Mhm.
so to answer that question, yes, they should be removing them. And even too, when you go into, because the NVRA was the National Registration Voter Act of 1993, HAVA, which is the Help America Voter Act of 2003, that basically gave even more ability for states by saying that states should be communicating within state agencies, i.e., if you've got like the Social Security or DMVs, they should be talking to each other if as it relates to keeping accurate voter rolls.
Mhm.
So the time limit is really only if you can't get a hold of the person. Then, if they fail to vote in the subsequent two federal elections, then they should be removed.
Got it.
Mhm.
Now, when you said they submitted, some sort of paperwork or something like that that didn't have the proper verbiage on it or whatever, who is they?
San Bernardino County, for the 218,000 specifically.
Okay. So is
It's
that a mistake that would commonly happen or just super coincidence that,
They well, in all fairness, they didn't know that I've spoken, reached out to all 58 counties, and so the trend again in the pattern that I found was specific counties started using that same exact excuse or
Mm,
reason, that they've identified these ineligible voters. They just can't, their hands are tied, and so um, it's
county clerk.
it's interesting, I think, to say that they're using that.
yeah,
Hmm. So
copy that.
yeah, because well, as far as I know, the California Secretary of State is the one in charge of state, election, and then you have your county clerks.
Hmm.
They're the ones that would do the roll cleanup, the county clerk, because it's county by county, then, right?
Yes, good question. And so another thing that complicates it is each state has the ability to identify as top down or bottom up or
Mm.
hybrid, which is a mixture of two. And that's just a fancy way of saying who gets the ability to clean the rolls or who gets the ability to kind of, is it at the county or is it the Secretary of State? And
Hmm.
so most states are basically a top down, which is like the Secretary of State can do it. California is only one of a handful that's bottom up. And so that's why um, they say that you've got to go to the county, right? Like you've got to go to the county, which in
Hmm.
California, we have the registrar of voters. And so uh, what I do know though, and I don't know if the Secretary of State knows this, but they have a read only inactive voter file. Actually, they can see all of the inactive voters and active voters on read only, and so they say it's bottom up in county, but they have access to seeing everything too. With
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, cause yeah, like I want to say in Fresno County, I saw that there was it was either 47 or 74,000. I forget. I'm flipping them inactive voters, and that was kind of in the air as far as like when were they gonna actually remove them or not, I guess. And that's the thing too. I saw that, and it's like, all right, like who do I go approach and be like, hey, what's up with this? Is this gonna get done or not? We need an answer. Hopefully, it is because, like you said, if they're inactive for that period of time, then why? One goes to think other reasons why they keep them on.
right,
So yeah.
yeah, that and Fresno, I think it was 56,000.
Okay.
It
Okay.
ended up getting it got funny because I called them ineligible, and they were trying to basically just defend and be like, they're not ineligible voters, they're inactive voters. And so it was funny to watch them kind of spin um, and just defend that.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, let's forget that they've been on the voter roll for 10 years and defend the fact that it's eligible or ineligible, which that's nuanced because I can prove it either way.
Yeah. It's like tomato, tomato, same thing.
Yeah.
And how does that happen? How does this go on for so long with
Hmm.
nobody paying attention to it or
Good.
doing anything about it?
Yeah, good question. So I've heard a number of reasons from specifically the counties themselves, and um, I think the the one that's the easiest to follow is in 2018, LA County got sued, and they ended up having to remove 1.2 million voters. What that lawsuit basically, when you just distill it down, it was the interpretation of what shall meant, or like basically like it was
Mm.
the county shall remove it essentially. And so what ended up happening is I've heard counties that basically say they're like, listen, before 2018, it was just kind of it was discretional, not mandatory. And that would be what I consider the legalese way of going about it, where like you'd actually be factually correct in saying that. The problem is when you look at it historically, there was never counties that in California since the NVRA passed the inactive voter, there just wasn't counties that were staying on top of it. And so then what happens is if 1 year or 2 years go by and you're like, oh, we kind of missed it, you would actually need somebody to be like, okay, well now we've got to get it real clean. And so what's happened over time in the past 30 years is California counties have literally not been doing their job. And so we just now dropped under the national average for the first time since 1996, I think.
That's crazy.
Sorry,
It's
I
hard
was
to
on mute.
believe that.
Sorry. So recently, I believe Carl DeMaio
Mhm.
has the Reform California thing. Um, I believe Benny Johnson was tweeting about something with Nicole Shan, forgetting her last name,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
RFK's running mate.
Yes,
um,
yes.
and then they're kind of talking about getting voter ID on the ballot for 2026.
Yeah.
Um, I believe I believe it's two separate initiatives there that's going on at the same time, but like for the same kind of thing, basically.
Mhm.
And I believe they need 800,000 or so signatures to get that on the ballot. What are your thoughts on that? Like, is that something that you can see? Because I feel like regular people like us, like if you told me I needed an ID to vote, okay, cool, I don't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which makes a whole lot of sense, right? Because you're talking about making decisions that affect our legislature here, and then whoever goes to Congress or the Senate or whatnot, or the president. Um, to me, to us, voter ID is something that it's common sense, you know. What are your thoughts on those, initiatives and that kind of getting pushed now? And overall, like federally, what are your thoughts on what the federal government can do? Because I know there's, the states do have control of their elections, but is there any way the federal government can get involved and be like, you know what, we need to have these set standards across the board? Because I think it's 36 states that do voter ID and the other ones don't. So it's like, something like that I think needs to be across the board implemented. But what are your thoughts on that?
And that's a great question. So the answer to the first part, I'm all for voter ID. I'm all for any effort that tries to make elections more fair. I think it's just common sense, like you said. And to answer the second part with what can the federal government do, it's a very tricky question. And um, more recently, I've actually had a light bulb moment because of the U.S. Postal Service being an agency of the federal government. And so for a long time, really, because right now nationally we have 23 million inactive voters, which if there's a nefarious bad actor, it's a ton of votes that you can potentially alter or manipulate. Uh,
Was that all the votes Biden was missing this time around?
People are like, where did those votes come from? I'm like, did anybody check the inactive total?
It's close.
Yeah, it's cleared that the 18 million. But I think if we're theorizing or kind of just thinking outside of the box, I think technically speaking, I'm not a lawyer, but I do like to kind of think and play with ideas. I think that there is grounds for vote by mail to be definitely kind of pulled in and reined in a little bit because of the federal agency, i.e., the United States Postal Service. And so I think best case scenario, because there were 66 million mail-in ballots that were transmitted the last election in 2024. So that's one of um, the easiest ways I think that you really lose trust in elections is when there's that many mail-in ballots. And,
Mhm.
and again, when you think about the mail-in ballot initially, like if you wanted to vote by mail, because an absentee is like, hey, I'm not going to be here. And then you sign, where you're going to be, or you just you have there's a little bit more work you have to do.
Mhm.
So that was first the absentee, and then you had basically just states start saying like, hey, well, we're going to do all of that, and um, all that meaning just mail everybody.
Mhm.
Wasn't that introduced because of COVID?
I don't. I don't know if it was introduced by COVID. I know because I think there's been 12 amendments or additions to voting law. The Ukova ballot, which is like if you lived or moved out of the country, is another one. That was the most recent that got added to the voting. I don't know in 2020 and COVID. I think states had the ability to kind of, without passing law, they were able to basically update procedures, which is another big one. But yeah, basically, COVID helped get everything going way faster. 80% of California voted by mail-in ballot, and so that's always a interesting figure.
It's funny because when you said about the USPS, I just thought like, all right, well, maybe they can get like some sort of rule that after election day, any ballot is like straight to the trash or something. Because that's also ridiculous. Where California's counting ballots or receiving ballots, whatever it is,
It,
7 days,
it,
14 days after the election. Like,
it,
Well, weeks and months in some
yeah,
cases,
it's like
huh?
it should be like, hey, if you're a postal worker, you saw a ballot the day after the election, throw that in this bin over here. You know, it didn't work. It didn't. Too late.
and there's different laws if it's post dated or postmarked or kind of
Yeah, yeah.
it gets so convoluted. The one part that makes it really tricky, as if it wasn't tricky enough, is a provisional ballot. And so provisional ballots, depending on the state, have the ability where it's essentially state law requires that it is not counted up till a certain amount of days. And that's because the provisional ballot is somebody like if I go to vote, but they can't,
You're
they
not registered.
yeah, they're like, okay, we're not going to say you can't give a ballot, but you're going to do it this way. And so that's what was funny in 2020 when you look at Georgia and you look at Clark County and Maricopa County, and a lot of the, well, remember it was taking so long for them to like count the votes. Well, state law let them in some states up to 21 days, and so people were getting super frustrated. But really, it's like state law, and the provisional ballot became a thing in 2003 with HAVA passing. But what's crazy in California, as best as I can read the election law, you have the ability for counties to count provisional ballots up until certification, which is 31 days, I think. And so that's
Uh-huh.
what there's ballots that are being counted afterwards. The crazy part is the provisional ballot. It's usually it makes up between 1% and 3% of all ballots, but it's supposed to be counted in a separate room because it's got sensitive information on it and it has basically a huge expiration date on it for how long it takes. And so it's like, yeah, if you're trying to alter an election, that's a really good way of doing it.
Mm.
Uh, and then you hear all the stories about ballot drops, but what was that movie? That
2001.
Appeals, I think.
Yeah, that one. Yep.
Yeah.
Where they're just dropping off, you know, little totes or crates or handfuls of just ballots into mailboxes. I mean, you were talking about the USPS and how it's federal. That's basically a federal crime. So you could do some major time because of that. And I haven't heard of anybody being prosecuted or anything like that. For doing that type of stuff. And then, like you said, connecting the dots. Ballot drops like that, and then dirty voter rolls. You put two and two together, and then the outcomes that you're looking at, numbers coincidentally matching up. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. And
that's
that's the
that's,
thing. Like
that's
I said at the beginning, it's like, California officials here, Newsom, they'll say like, our elections are on point,
safe.
safe.
Yeah.
We got integrity here. But it's like, we don't check ID. We don't we don't do anything when we go vote that actually be like, all right, you're nothing, nothing. Then you get mail-in ballots. You don't know who filled them out, right? Ballot harvesting, other thing there too. Um, I saw that. I saw that. I don't know if this was true or not, but the dog that voted twice. I mean, if that's true, like, come on, like,
It was true. That's the craziest part. One of the elections her vote actually counted.
that's.
How
But
does
you
that
see, like,
happen? I mean,
the,
I don't even understand. I can't even wrap my head around that. How does that happen?
Yeah, I thought it was a joke, but the
yeah,
the DA actually put out like an official statement, and so what she was doing was she was trying to. I think I'll say this just because it's like like she got 5 felony what's it called counts for it,
yeah,
but I think she was trying to prove how corrupt the system was,
Mm.
and so she registered her dog and then voted for her dog. And how it happens is a great question, though, and that's where
hmm
for me, I think sometimes perspective is a huge thing because if you step back, if you look at a problem and everybody's saying the same thing, at least for me, I want to be a difference. And
hmm
so the one thing when you look at California, you look at Newsom, and it's all corrupt. Everybody's kind of everyone's saying the same thing, which is good. But if you take a step back, right, and for me, it was cool because um, she's incredible. She's been in the election integrity space for a long time, but she filled me in on something that was huge, which is in the early 90s there was lawsuits that basically cleared out like the bigger data companies that would be handling the voter rolls. And so that's one of the big things, right? When you think about, it's so corrupt, it's, this, it's that. Well, why is it that we have the ability and technology that are in other industries and sectors, yet it's not applying to something that is such a big deal like voting? If you're
Mhm.
able to figure out that question, it's just a little change of perspective, then it starts to make sense. And so what ended up happening was in the early 90s, there was basically lawsuits that got out all of the people that were basically in the industry. So like right now, when you think of real ID, the biometrics, Oracle's the one that's collecting all that data. It's their software. It makes sense because they're Oracle, right? When you look at voter rolls in California, I mean, VoteCal is the company, and it's got a parent company that's publicly traded, but like it's it happens because of like very strategic stuff, right? That we don't look at. And then it's created a huge headache, but it's actually this symptom, not the causation. So that's kind of what has helped too, of just going, wait, how do we get here instead of just noticing that we're here?
Mm.
So moving forward, right? So there's nothing that you can do about the past and the patterns that you see in the past or anything like that. But they can obviously help, people like you and your organization for election integrity moving forward, how to attack this. So what is the plan moving forward then?
Mm.
Good question. Uh, and to answer that truthfully, there's probably three different avenues, and so um, continuing to remind the counties that they need to remove voters is one strategy. That's probably what I'm more prominently talking about on X. There is another strategy that I don't talk about as much, just because it's still in the kind of not idea state, but and it's how and this ties into how somebody could help, because basically in theory, and I've checked with the agencies at the top, to see if this theoretically would work, and I got the basically approval for it. But you need to, like I said earlier, in order to remove somebody from the voter roll, you need to have the person themselves confirm in writing they no longer live in the jurisdiction. And so what my goal is to create basically a website or a platform that allows somebody who no longer lives in that jurisdiction to confirm in writing that they no longer live in that jurisdiction, i.e., they're removed, which would basically be it's just doing what the county's supposed to do, and but we're doing it. And so that's kind of I would just if I, for everyone who's like part of this, and I so appreciate people who follow. It's crazy to me, but just keep a lookout for that, because that's going to be basically one of the ways closer to the election. I mean, I haven't really talked about it, but I just said it now, so it's all good. But there's definitely going to be ways that people can get involved. Right now, it's a very specific, tight line that you actually like. It's almost legalese talk for counties, and so. For right now, I just stay tuned, stay focused. And the thing is, the Secretary of State hears us. That's what's crazy.
Mm.
Like they know that we're like, okay, what's going on, and so everyone that's paying attention and following, like, just it's working. I don't know if that makes sense to answer your question.
Yeah, well, we say it all the time. They bank on us not to show up to vote. They
Think
bank on us not to pay attention to these details so they can continue to do what they've always done.
Mhm.
totally.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That,
no,
and,
that makes sense.
and really, like, if I could give a picture of what I'm trying to do, I'm just throwing a rock or a stick in the machine and trying to break it. Like that, like there's such an expectation that nothing is going to be done, and so it moves really, really smoothly. And so I just see this big machine that's working really good. I don't know exactly how it works, right? I can use deductive reasoning and little things to see patterns, but I'm just trying to throw rocks in this thing to get it to just basically stop working as well. And as long as there's enough people doing that, which it's like, hey, we may not even have access to the data, uh, but yeah, it's like if good men do nothing, that's how evil happens. As long as we're not doing anything, like
Mhm.
it's going to be the same result.
Yeah. And, you know, people in business hear this all the time. It's not that the machine, like, is doing a good thing, it's working really good at something bad. So it's almost like bad data in, garbage out. We
Hmm.
want to get good data in and get, accurate results,
Mhm.
is basically what the goal is. And
Yeah,
that's kind
no.
of crazy to think that that's what I get what you're saying. You're trying to break it so that it could be efficient. it's
Mhm.
so it's so wild that I don't know.
No, and the other thing that I like that you said was like, yeah, there's a lot of people that, you know, think they can't break the machine, so to speak. Just like, oh, this is how it is, nothing's gonna happen. It's just gonna keep rolling. Um, you know, I
And
like
that's
to
another
think,
thing that they want. It's that
yeah,
part
that's
of
what they want. And
Yeah.
I'd
demo
like to think,
demoralize it. Yeah.
the three of us here aren't those type of people. We're gonna make noise. We're gonna throw those little pebbles, because you just got to get stuck in that one gear and boom, it pops. But that's what people need to avoid because, I think I was telling you before we're doing a lot of California related stuff recently, especially with Prop 50, and you see the comments here and there about people kind of like, oh, it doesn't matter, they don't there's no integrity here, or the
Mhm.
Democrats are going to cheat anyways. Like, I get that feeling because, like we said, even though we think we're the majority and Democrats keep winning, it's like, yeah, it makes you sound like you're crazy.
Mhm.
But, if everyone just accepts that and goes, well, that's just how it is, well, that's how it's going to stay. And we need everybody, more than us, more than Shiloh, to just, all right, start making some noise, start, you know, sticking our noses where they don't, where they don't probably say you don't belong here. And that's stuff that affects us directly. So we do have to get in there, we do have to get dirty
Yeah.
and make this a fight, make this, you know, something where yeah, it breaks, but like Danny said and you said, it's like, but the result is, all right, now it works. That sounds weird to say, but we break it, but now it works.
Yes, and to that point too, especially like because everyone's got an opinion, and I think sometimes it's good that people share that online.
Mhm.
But what I think is even more important per se right now for California is going against the narrative and like not to get deep, but what I'm trying to say is everybody knows California is corrupt. So why do we keep talking about it? Like it's it's like gossip. There's just this like addiction to talking about how bad California is. And that feeds into their plan, right? That makes so much sense. It's like like they like that. But the difference is when that happens for so long, when you have somebody that comes along that says, because what's crazy, how tweet California will flip and it like goes crazy. And I'm like, how and why? But the difference is optimism that's not rooted in data or facts is really just it's kind of I think it's a practice in futility. Like it doesn't matter. The difference is if we really do believe that California is more red or more conservative or just more common sense, if we speak to it, it has so much freaking strength. Like that's what I love about Benny coming out is California has been just lost as far as politics, right? People don't come out here. It's blue. It's people move. The problem is sometimes in order to fix something, even to break the machine or fix the machine, all we have to do is turn on a light because the evil, the corruption, it can only work in darkness. And so what I love is California's now on the map. Like people are talking about it. We just got like we just lost the last election by 3.1 million, which is the like right. It's not like it's something overnight has happened. Yet there's an optimism that I believe is rooted in hope. That's actually rooted in like the data. That the more people speak out, I think it's going to mess with like when you look at the video that just came out with Katie Porter, like she's the lead like gubernatorial Democrat right now. We like shut it down. We're like, there's just no way. I think if you rewind, if this was 2 years ago, no, I don't think enough people would have said anything, so it would have kind of gone unnoticed. Right now, like it
Mhm.
just went boom. And so yes, I think that even apart from lawsuits or specifically contacting your county, I think people just like being optimistic that California can flip or it can start to change and trend in the direction that we want. I think that is the biggest key, honestly, in this whole thing. Like and I'm not like, exaggerating. I think it's it'll be a huge difference maker.
Yeah, no. We have to have that. I don't know if you want to call it the right attitude or whatever, but we've said many times, like, yeah, we're gonna turn this around. Like, it's gonna happen. And again, we do deal with people that see California and make fun of it.
Mm,
You know, or the people that are here, like I said, and then they just don't even try because they gave up already. But I think if we, like you said, speak on the possibility of us just paying attention, getting involved, we can. Yeah, I think I saw your tweet was California will flip in 2026. It's like, we have a saying, we say in 2026 we're going to break the blue wave.
yeah.
Like, I think that's how we have to like look at things, that we're gonna win. We have the ability to win if we just do what we have to do. And I think more people
Mhm.
need to have that sort of mindset, and that freedom to speak up about things. Kind of like you said about the clip. I think more people are posting about it because it matters. Um, Katie Porter to me is just, I did a clip on her a couple weeks ago, and it's like, dude, we got Newsom. She's saying the exact same thing, so it's like, why are we gonna vote for an Echo if we already know we don't like Newsom? You know what I mean? So, it's possible to get people more informed, right? So that when, yes, they do go vote for a governor, even if, let's say, we don't get all these voter rolls cleaned up and all that, like I told you before we went on, at least they're informed. So when they go vote, it's not just, oh, I'm Republican or Democrat. It's like, what is this person really going to do? Like, what are they running on? And then you vote, right? If you decide the Democrat is your best choice, fine. But at least you did that with some actual thought and not just, you know, hey, D or R, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we try to push and focus on too.
No, and there's a lot of power in what you guys said right now about optimism. It's about gaining momentum.
Mhm.
So with that optimism, you start building that um, positive momentum, and then people start paying attention to what's surrounding them, and they go, actually, you know what? I do realize that the people around me and the conversations that I'm having, you know, um, are people that have share the same values that I do, and then they start opening their eyes rather than just paying attention to what they see in social media, popular culture and things like that. Like right now, the outrage with Bad Bunny, I think, is really good. It's like, okay, there's this guy. I believe that he's not doing concerts in the U.S. because of Trump's
ICE.
immigration policy or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. So people have been having to go to Puerto Rico and stuff like that to go see him perform. And yeah, he, from what I hear, he's doing good things with the proceeds, for Puerto Rico and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, um, people are talking about it, like you guys said. So I see this momentum
Yeah,
building and building and building, and it's a good thing.
yeah. That
Mm-hmm.
that and I think the part that is exciting for me is the momentum is actually built on a lot of data, a lot of research. I can't necessarily take the time to I don't I'm not good enough at this to articulate it in a way that I think a lot of people
Mhm.
can understand, because like Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a kid, you don't know it well enough. And so I don't
Mm.
have I don't have that ability to articulate and communicate in a way where it's like, oh, that makes sense. And so the momentum, though, that I think is built on optimism is founded. It's and but what's crazy is you have that effort, and then people that are just simply going like, this is crazy, like this is I don't like this anymore. And so really the momentum, and I just believe, you guys, there's something special about the momentum right now. There's some, it's an intangible. But what's crazy about intangibles, when you think about like momentum, that literally with sports books in Vegas, right? They give the home
Mm.
team an advantage based only on who's cheering. Like the
Mm.
we don't think about that. There's a home field advantage, right? But it actually, that momentum plays into what, you know,
That's a great point.
and so
That's
it's one of the things for me where I see that I'm like, let's not belittle it. Which sometimes, if we're unfamiliar with it, people are just like, well, don't don't get hopeful. And I'm like, okay, but it's actually founded in something that, but it just keeps growing. Like with Benny, when Benny like said that, because I just tweeted, I was like, I heard there's a block party, and I just tagged everybody that Benny said in the interview. And then Benny reposted it and said, "Yeah, I'm bringing Kid Rock too." And it's like, okay, so now California's got national attention, like with the
Mhm.
conservative movement. Like, what's going on? But to your point, it's a momentum that I think I think it's gonna will tell.
Yeah.
no,
Just
that's
just
go
one
ahead.
more thing I want to say is like, 'cause you said, you can't explain it or, say it in a manner for a kid to understand, but, also, Shiloh, realize what we said. It's like you're trying to make sense of explain in a sensible manner a machine that makes no sense. So it is tough, you know what I mean?
That's
So
yes, that's yeah. I mean, I went through the other night. I went back and looked at all the data again, starting in 1994, and I haven't. I had like I know what I saw. I just don't know how to articulate it yet. And so it's literally the more that time goes on. Because in January, actually, I started kind of doing the research for California specifically in December, but since January to now, it's like night and day. Like I just keep learning more or understanding or seeing new research where it's like, goodness gracious, it's just making it a lot easier. And so yeah, I mean, it's deductive reasoning, right? It's already, if they are rigging elections, you can re-engineer it, and so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just basically figure out, if they did it, like what would be a theory. And so
Yeah,
that data keeps like growing, which is that for me it's exciting, because you don't have to make something up. Like it's all there. You just have to find it.
yeah. And like you said, as more elections pass by and they come and they go, you're able to take that data and you can see if what you know the people on the battle for election integrity are making a difference in how it's making a difference in how much the needle is moving.
Mhm.
So no, I mean we're excited, for what you're doing. Is there anything that you want to tell people, to get involved or help out in any way, shape, or form, or is there any information that you would like to share, um, you know, to help moving forward?
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Thank you guys for having me. The website's right there, childmarks.com. I just got the filing for the nonprofit, and so I'm going to start to update the website and stuff in the days to come. You can sign up for the newsletter on the website too. But I think the biggest thing, honestly, like if I could thank you to everybody that's even took time out of their day, because I'm just a normal guy with no experience in this, right? So the fact someone's retweeting or like I wouldn't go out of my way to retweet someone that I didn't know. And so it means the world. And if everybody just keeps talking about and not hyping it up. But if we just keep California elections and what's going on and the momentum we have, if we keep that moving, it's only going to get better. So that's the only request I have is if any of this makes sense, if people just keep talking about it, that it's just getting better every week. And so that would be the only thing is if it makes sense, let's keep rolling with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I just use my line, Daniel?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Forget about your fantasy football lineup and start paying attention to Shiloh and what he's talking about.
I won fantasy last year too, so you can do both. But yes, it's if
It's that important. Yeah.
if we spend a little bit of time, all for but it's like yes, amen, amen.
All right. Well, Shiloh, we thank you for coming on.
Thank you
You
guys for
know,
having me, man.
we appreciate the conversation. We hope everyone that tuned in and watched this or is gonna watch this, hears that information, right, about those patterns and things like that they might have not even heard about. Hopefully, um, everyone goes to your website, signs up for the newsletter, keeps talking about it, like you said. They can follow you on X at Shiloh Marx. It's on the screen.
Yeah,
You're on Instagram now, I think, or
I'll be honest with you. I started Instagram. It gave me anxiety, so I had like 2 days, and I was like,
follow him on X.
yeah, I'm on X, and people you can follow me there. I just get there's so many people, like emails and like, and I'm like, so
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
I'll get back. I'll try to get back on Instagram when my anxiety lowers.
Yeah, no, so follow him on X. He drops a lot of good information on there, and kind of like we said, you're a normal guy, we're normal guys. But hey, that's what it's gonna take, right? We don't know everything, but hey, we're gonna ask the questions and we're gonna point it out. And when something doesn't make sense, we're gonna say it. So we'd love to have you on again, and especially as we get closer to, well, after the special election, we'll see kind of what happened there. And then as we get closer to the 2026 midterm, we'd love to have you on again because it'd be interesting to see where we are with either voter rolls and whatnot. If the federal government does anything, you know what I mean? Like we'll see where we are in a couple months or so, and we'll kind of go from there. But we appreciate your time and thank you, man, for coming on.
Thank you guys, man. I'd love to come back, and thank you guys for having me.
Cool,
Thank
cool.
you,
All
Shiloh.
right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and as we say always, peace be with you.
Peace be with you.